Good morning and a warm welcome to each of you. My name is Daniela Salazar, a proud Colgate alumna, and have been at EY for 4 years in the data analytics government practice. Today marks a momentous occasion as we have the distinct privilege of hosting Mr. Carmine Sibio, esteemed Global Chairman and CEO of EY. Prior to being elected to his current post, Mr. Sibio served as EY's Global Managing Partner Client Service, leading the execution of the organization's global strategy and implementing its 4 geographical areas and its 4 service lines. Mr. Sibio has been at the forefront of efforts to redefine how EY uses technology and innovation, leverage his understanding of cultures and clients around the world, and started EY's risk management and regulatory services. Mr. Sibio's leadership journey is a testament to the transformative power of stewardship and commitment to sustainability. Under his guidance, EY has charted an ambitious course towards environmental responsibility, setting pioneering benchmarks within the global business community. We've decreased our emissions over 40% over the last 5 years while growing our revenue 40%. That's pretty remarkable. Throughout my tenure at EY, Mr. Sibio has served as CEO, and I've had the opportunity to see firsthand his adept leadership in steering us through a global health crisis, the firm's response during a period of significant social change, and fostering critical conversations about racial justice and equity. I deeply value his dedication to nurturing diversity and inclusiveness, particularly as he serves as the co-chair of the EY Global Diversity and Inclusiveness Steering Committee. His support for diversity and inclusion initiatives like leadership programs and events such as ALPHA, Association of the Latino Professionals for America, resonates with me personally, having been a participant in recent years. As we embark on this enlightening dialogue with Mr. Sibio, I encourage each of you to embrace this opportunity to glean insights from a trailblazer in sustainable leadership. With his expertise and insights, along with our visionary leadership of our own Colgate's Dean, David Marchik, we position ourselves to change. And let us collectively set on a journey of inspiration and enlightenment. Please join me in welcoming and extending a heartfelt to the stage Mr. Carmine Sibio and our moderator for today, Dean David Marchik.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Dean.
for that great introduction. Couple other things just to mention before we get started. EY is our second largest employer at AU. I think we have it goes up and down, but I think we have around 400 alums at EY who are enjoying great productive careers. A number of alums are in the audience, and so thanks for our alums for being here. We have several members of our board of directors here, and also several members of our Colgate Advisory Committee. And then we also have our basketball team, and they're giving you the stink eye because you're on the Colgate board, and he wears purple shoes. So
Maroon,
anyway.
maroon.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we're coming after Colgate. We beat them once this year, but so thank you very much for being here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and then we'll open up to the audience. And we also have a large number of people online. So let's start with your youth. You were an immigrant to the United States. Your family moved here when you were 3. And I've heard you talk about the issue of belonging and some of the challenges that you faced as an immigrant, and also how that shaped your worldview. Maybe start a little with your youth and that sense of belonging.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me, Dave. It's great to be here. It's great to meet everyone. I love talking to people and talking to people about their future. It's a lot of fun for me. Yes, I was. We immigrated here when I was 3 years old, and I come from a small town in Italy called Frigento, which is in the province of Avellino, which is about an hour drive from Napoli and a couple hour drive from Rome. And landed here on Pan Am. People don't even know what Pan Am is now, but Pan Am was a regular airline at the time. And settled in a town on the north shore of Long Island called Glen Cove, very Italian community. But it was the U.S., and it was my first sense in terms of the word belonging, and when we use the word, and today at EY, we talk a lot about belonging, making sure that people belong to their teams, belong to EY. But first time I've experienced kind of difference, because, and I say this jokingly, but it's real. My mom would make me lunch every day, and I'd go to school, and all the other kids' sandwiches were typically bologna and cheese, and mine was mozzarella and prosciutto. And at the time, the other kids would look at the sandwich and say, "Oh, that's disgusting. How can you eat that?" And so, that's the first time I really sensed that maybe I didn't belong. But over time, you kind of overcome those things. And ironically, now I'd rather have a prosciutto and mozzarella sandwich than a bologna and cheese sandwich. But it took 30 years to get there, or 20 years to get there. So from there, my brother and I have one brother. My parents were blue-collar parents. My dad was in construction, and my mom was a seamstress. And they really valued education. And so we were talking on the way in here. Education was everything to them, and making sure that we were educated more than they had been educated was paramount to them. And so so that was the environment that I grew up in, and I did grow up in an environment where if I came home with, and back then it was more number grades versus letter grades, but if I came home with a 95, the question wasn't, it wasn't like, "Oh, wow, you did great, 95." It was, "Why didn't you get 100?" And that was a driver for me and for my brother. And from there, we grew up in a suburb of New York, and played a lot of sports, and worked hard. And we were fortunate enough actually both my brother and I were recruited to play baseball. I ended up not playing baseball, he did. And I ended up at Colgate University, and my brother actually ended up at Brown. And so my parents, at the time, they were proud, but they didn't know what that really meant. And so that's a little bit about years.
Your parents are alive now, or?
Yep, they're
so they've
alive.
seen your success, and that must give them just incredible pride.
It does. Yeah, my dad's 87, my mom's 85. They're alive. They're in good health. Just had dinner with them Sunday night. And we've done a lot of things, including we've gone back to my town in Italy, where they had a whole celebration when I was announced as a CEO. Right. So yeah.
Now you went. By the way, I want to thank Sean Maher, who's in the back. Sean's a longtime friend of mine. He's vice chairman of EY, and I basically begged him for about 2 years to get Carmine to come here for reasons you'll understand after you hear him speak. But thank you, Sean, for facilitating this. So you went to Colgate, and you were a chemistry major because your parents probably put a lot of pressure on you, and you wanted to be a doctor. Okay, so you get to Colgate, study chemistry, and then you have an internship, and you realize, I don't want to be a doctor. So what happened, and why didn't you become a doctor?
At this internship, as I mentioned to you, we had these terms at Colgate. It was a fall term and a spring term, but there was a thing called a January term. And in January, you can do a lot of different things. You could go hiking somewhere. You had to write a paper on what you did, but you could also do a much more serious internship. And I chose to do a serious internship in my junior year, January, in New York at New York Hospital. And I would have to be there at 6 a.m. to do rounds with doctors, and then I would observe surgery from, let's say, 9 to 2 p.m. And I've seen all kinds of crazy surgeries, and literally I would walk around in a white coat and then lean over, scrub and all that. And everyone I talked to, so this is now 1984, everyone I talked to hated what they were doing. Every doctor, every person, they really didn't like what they were doing. And the surgeries kind of bothered me, and so I wrote the paper, but I went back to school, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I was far enough in chemistry that I couldn't really change, and I said, what I really want to do is get into the business world. And someone said to me, well, I don't think they're going to think you're not smart if you're a chemistry major, so I continued with chemistry. But I did get an opportunity at the time. The big 8 firms, because there are 4 now, there were 8 then. They all merged, and a couple of banks had a program where you can, where those firms were looking for liberal arts type majors because they had a lot of technical majors, but they didn't have people with liberal arts backgrounds. So they had a program affiliated with NYU where you were able to get your master's in accounting and eventually your MBA from NYU, and that's what I got into. And I started with a firm called Arthur Young, which was a predecessor to EY. And that's how I got into it. That's how I got into the business world to start with.
And you started in audit. So one of the things we have a challenge, well, actually all universities have a challenge right now, is a lot of students don't want to take accounting. They think it's boring. They think accountants are boring. My view is that accounting is a great degree to do anything you want. You can be a CEO, CFO, you can be a head of marketing, you can, so how did you move from chemistry and get into audit and then learn accounting as well?
Well, I really learned accounting in grad school. It was where I got my fundamental learning in accounting and obviously took my CPA exam and all that. But audit to me, I started in audit and what I liked about it was that it really gave me a basis to learn how companies worked, how their financials worked, how business worked in general, the whole CPA, the whole accounting skills, gave me a real grounding in terms of, obviously the financials behind the company. And back then it was important that I always said to the people who staffed us on these different accounts, I want to see some big companies and some small companies, because in audit, if you're on a big company, you'll audit, accounts receivable, and that'll be in your first year or two, that'll be like the entire year or two. But if you audit some smaller companies, you got to see the entire financial statements. And so I wanted to make sure I had a balance of those, because the bigger companies, you worked with a big team, the environment was a little different, so you wanted to get a balance. So that's what I did, and I liked it. I was in audit for 10, 11 years. I made partner in audit. And I was really focused on financial services. I really wanted to learn about financial services. And so I did a lot of work in banks and broker-dealers and asset managers, some insurance. And then when I made partner, I was on a client called Bankers Trust, which eventually got bought by Deutsche Bank. And this is when someone in the earlier session asked me about failures. So I was, I did really well. I made partner in 10 years. So it was 1995. 1996, we lost the audit of Bankers Trust, which was 80% of my time. And I was a brand new partner, a year or two into partnership. It was 96, 97. And I'm like, my God, what am I going to do now? And we didn't lose it because of me, but we lost it because they got bought and so forth. And at the time, EY gave me and 2 other partners the opportunity to start a group within EY, really doing consulting work with financial institutions, in particular around risk management, around market risk, operational risk, credit risk. And also at the time, regulation was coming much more into the banks and so forth. So we started this group with a couple of us. We recruited a couple of senior managers and some staff. And pretty quickly, we got it up to about 40 people. And then the quote, because at that time, all these firms ran with an office managing partner, and they were like the kings or queens, mostly kings. And they were like, whoa. Well, the office managing partner allowed us to recruit more people, and we started driving a lot of revenue. Then we started recruiting people from the outside and so forth. That group today is global, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Which you started
with EY.
The numbers that the numbers are staggering. So when you started, I think as CEO, EY had around 270,000 employees, and now you have 5 years later, 400,000. It's unbelievable amount of growth. and you had about $35 billion in revenue, and now you have 50. So those are numbers that would be the envy of any CEO. Which part of your businesses grew the most, and was that planned, or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, no, so that's a good question. It was planned. I mean, look, our consulting business, our strategy and transactions business, those two, what we call service lines in particular, they've been growing at 20% clips the last 4 or 5 years for sure. Our tax practice has been growing double digits. Our audit practice has been growing mid-single digits, but our entire business has been growing. Obviously, so what's spurred that growth? One is technology, and that's a big piece. Companies need a lot of help in terms of technology and implementing technology and so forth. So that was very big for our consulting business. But then two, prior to a year and a half ago, low interest rates, lots of deal activity in the market, mergers, spin-outs, and so forth. Those all are great for our strategy and transactions business and our consulting business. And with low interest rates, there was a lot of that going on around the world. Those were a couple of the factors that started pushing our growth for sure. And then came the more recent phenomenon around sustainability and around AI. So around sustainability, right around when I became CEO, we decided to really embrace sustainability. So we were one of the first firms we took one of our most senior people, a gentleman named Steve Varley, who headed our UK firm. We took him out of the UK role and we made him our global head of sustainability. And we said, Steve, listen, you have to get sustainability into everything we do, okay? Tax, audit, consulting, supply chain, because we have to help our clients in terms of sustainability. And you also have to help us build a brand. And I mentioned to you earlier, we typically take something like that's a new phenomenon that's going on. We start it central, we build a brand, and then we push it into our businesses. And so that's exactly what we did around sustainability. And our sustainability, our CCAS practice today is over $1 billion in revenue, and we have 4,000 people in it. But that's like the nucleus of our sustainability practice. We do sustainability in everything we do. So supply chain practice and consulting, our tax practice works a lot around incentives and sustainability. And that's been our strategy. And we've been advising our clients to do the same.
That's great. And this is one of the reasons why I begged Sean to get Sean here. You made basically 3 bets, which are very consistent with what we're doing here at Kogod. Diversity, sustainability, and AI.
Yep.
And we're betting on the same. So let's just drill down. Okay, so let's start with diversity. So when you started, this is probably a bad characterization, but when you started at EY, it was more like Mad Men. It was all men. People basically were on the road Monday through Thursday. They came home. Very few women, very few people of color. And you have, one of your priorities, both when you were the number 2 and also now as the CEO, has been to bring women and people of color not only into the firm, but also into leadership. So why did you do that, and what success and what challenges have you had?
Well, first of all, when people talk about diversity, diversity is part of our business. It's part of really attracting the best talent. And if you want to attract the best talent, you're not going to be siloed and only hire people who look the same or who look a certain way. You're going to be open in terms of who's best at something. So we never looked at diversity in terms of things like quotas or anything like that. We just want to get the best talent. And as demographics change, the best talent is broad. So we've been on this for many years, and I'm very proud in terms of what we've been able to do, but there's still more work to be done. So on the gender side today, over 34% of our new partners are women, okay? Now on the gender side, here's the issue. On the hiring side, some of you all come to EY at the age of 22 or 23, 50% are women. So we're still losing some. So there's still more work to do. Until we get to 50-50 at the partner promotion, there's still more work to do. But that 34% number 10 years ago was 23%. 10 years before that was like 14%. So it's moving in the right direction. Some people would say it's moving too slow. On diversity from other perspectives, in terms of ethnic backgrounds and everything else, we've made it a point to make sure that we are recruiting at the right schools, that we're recruiting the right people, and that we're helping them. And so we have a lot of programs within EY to help to make sure that everyone's getting the support that they need. And I don't have stats around that because it's hard to have stats, but it's been very different. If you look at our global board, we have 33% women. We have several people of color. We have, and it's 18 people. We have geographical diversity, which we think is important as well. And so diversity has been something that we're always focused on, and we track it. We developed this tool, we call it our DEI tracker, that fits into our strategy. And this is something that we do for our clients as well. So whatever we do for ourselves, we also do for our clients. And it's been successful.
Now, there's been a backlash against DEI, in the press, in Congress, among certain governors. Has that led you to back off, or are you full steam ahead?
No, we are full steam ahead, but we are looking at it slightly different. We're looking at everything we've been looking at, but we realize that EY changes people's lives. It certainly changed my life. And so the concept that we're really focused on right now is social mobility. And so we have our DEI global group, advisory group. It's about 50 of our top partners around the world. Not everyone's diverse. It's a diverse group, but not everyone, there's white males in the group. There's all different types of people. And we were in a meeting kind of like this, and we were just strategizing on how to go forward. And I said, okay, there's 50 of us in the room. How many of your parents knew what EY was before you actually took a job at EY, or even knew what a corporate job was like? Okay, of that group of 50, how many do you think answered yes to that?
I don't know.
2. Close.
2.
2. Everyone else came from a background that their parents had no idea what EY was, had no idea what the corporate world was. Now some were more blue-collar workers, but some were even teachers or nurses or that just didn't know anything about it. And we started realizing that EY is a place where people can really flourish of all different backgrounds. And we did do a survey, and you have to be careful on how you ask this question, but 40% no idea who EY was. And that's not a,
Right.
So it's we're going about it in terms of bettering people's lives. And this is, I'm giving you a little bit of a sneak preview. You'll see online some films from some of our people in terms of social mobility,
Right.
and what it's done for them.
Right.
And I think more companies are moving towards that angle on this, but we're not changing all the other things we did either.
So let's move to sustainability. So one of the things that I think is interesting about what you did, you have a huge practice advising companies on sustainable practice. I think it's the largest sustainability practice in the world. But you started by kind of getting your own house in order. So you made some carbon pledges. What were they, and are you meeting them, and how's that going?
So we made a pledge in 2019 that we would be carbon negative by 2025. And what it took to get to that would be 40% reduction in our emissions. And we also made a pledge that every year we'd be carbon neutral. So the original pledge, our emissions are mostly around air travel for our people. And COVID helped a lot. And so sometimes it's just as good to be lucky than good, but COVID helped a lot because it changed how we worked. And so, obviously there was a lot less travel during COVID, but even after COVID, there's a lot less travel because we're obviously using technology and using video and so forth. So we're actually on track to meet that. Now, to be carbon neutral every year, the only way we're going to be able to do that is by buying offsets. And this is a controversial area because, there's, even to this day, there's a lot of controversy in terms of offsets being real offsets, being, truly something good for the environment. So we're very careful of which offsets we buy, but we've been buying offsets to offset the emissions that we do have.
And when you say we have a sustainability practice, what does that mean, and what type of advice do you give your clients?
Yeah, so our sustainability practice works everything from strategy and what companies should do in terms of their strategy around sustainability and how do they embed it in what they do, their business and so forth, through supply chains, how do they reorganize their supply chain to be more sustainable, and then to reporting and assurance around reporting in terms of how they're reporting around sustainability. So that practice is the nucleus for all of those, but then if it's, for example, supply chain, on a project, we would probably have some people from that practice, and then our broader consulting practice would probably have the bulk of the people on that type of project, and that's kind of how we work.
And I think you mentioned earlier that supply chain was your fastest growing part of that. That's the area that your clients are demanding the most advice and implementation of sustainable supply chain strategies.
Yeah, because on supply chains, there's a couple different factors that are coming in here. It's not just sustainability, it's also geopolitics. So if someone is moving their supply chain, let's say, out of China or wants to move it, they're going to move it somewhere and they're going to make sure that it's much more sustainable. So those two kind of come hand in hand.
Okay, let's move to AI. Okay, so we announced about 3 weeks ago that we will, as of fall of 2024, that we'll be one of the first business schools in the country to incorporate AI into everything we do. When students come, they'll get AI in orientation, their core classes, their electives. We'll have 20 classes on AI. So what are you all doing in AI, and how is it changing your day-to-day work?
Yeah, so we are, so first of all, we are developing tools and buying tools from our alliance partners in terms of AI. So as I mentioned to you, we're a very heavy Microsoft shop. I actually think Microsoft, almost everyone has to have Microsoft today. It's almost to the point of there being a problem, so we signed up for 20,000 licenses of Copilot. Copilot is their tool on how to code, how to use AI in coding and so forth. So we're making sure that we have all the right tools. Let's start with that. We are also training. Okay, so our people are being trained on AI. As I mentioned, we have a program, a training program at EY. We call it our badge program. So whatever the topic is, you start with a bronze badge, you work yourself up to a silver and then gold. And it's been very successful. Our people like it. And I tell all our people, when you're very busy on a project, then the project ends and sometimes you're on the bench until you get on the next project, use that time to really take these badges and so forth. So we're training, we're getting all the right tools. And then from an overall company perspective, the playbook on AI has been very similar to the playbook on sustainability. So we put someone in charge of AI globally. It's actually two people. They basically have developed our brand in AI, and they're also making sure that AI gets pushed into everything we do, similar to what you're doing. So a lot of the work we're doing in consulting and productivity now is involving AI. Our audit work, the tools we're using around our audit work is also starting to involve AI. It involved machine learning, going back 5 years, but now it's truly getting into generative AI. Right. To give you a more detailed example there, in all our audits, when you look at leases, companies all have leases and so forth. The leases are like this thick. And to get through them all, to make sure you're auditing them, takes a lot of time. Well, by using machine learning, this is like 5 years ago, we started really pulling out the right terms to make sure the accounting for these leases was right. Now, that was using machine learning. Now, when we're using generative AI, we don't even need the person there to, the AI will do the accounting, make sure the accounting's right. So that's just a specific example. But it's still in its early stage, actually, in terms of how much we're going to utilize this. All our clients and we, the big question is, okay, what's the productivity saving? And we are starting to measure that, and we are seeing savings. In some places we're measuring it, it's 20, 30% savings, but that's just a start. And then when I say that, of course, the next question is, oh, does that mean, instead of 400,000 people, you're only going to need 100,000 people? Well, we won't need 400,000 people for the same growth. I mean, we will continue to grow, but probably with less people, using more AI and technology.
Which is one of the, we had a CEO of a venture capital firm here, and a student asked, well, is my job going to be replaced by AI? And the CEO said, your job won't be replaced by AI, but if you don't know AI, you'll be replaced by someone who does. And so that led us to basically say, we got to go all in on AI. And our students next year will be able to have badges, certificates, so that when they apply to EY, they'll already know how to use AI for auditing, marketing, financial analysis, and hopefully that'll give our students a leg up.
Yeah.
Is that
Absolutely.
good strategy or bad strategy?
I think it's a great strategy.
Okay.
I think it's I think that's fantastic. And I think, look, one of the things that I think you all are doing a great job just by listening to you today is making sure that your curricula is flexible for some of the new items that are out there. I'm involved with some other schools, as you know, and to get the curricula to change and to get the faculty to agree to those changes is virtually impossible.
Very hard. I'm looking for Casey Evans. She's our Dean of Honor. We just approved a new curriculum. She went to school here. I won't tell you how old she is, but let's just say that the curricula didn't change from the time she went to school to the time she's Associate Dean. And as of next year, our curricula will be modernized, more flexible, incorporate sustainability, AI, professionalism. We're incorporating all the things that employers want our students to have. So
I think that's fantastic, and I'll tell you, by doing that, you'll leap ahead of others, because that is one of the biggest issues that I've seen.
And it was a very big challenge, because every faculty says, well, my course is the most important course. It has to be in the core. But the core then just got bloated and bloated. So anyway, Casey, thank you for what you're doing. Let's talk about leadership. So when you started as a chemistry major at Arthur Young, did you think you were going to be CEO, or did you have ambitions to be CEO? How did this happen?
No, I was, at that time, all I was really focused on is getting some experience, completing my MBA and completing my CPA, and then I would leave, go to Wall Street, make a ton of money.
Make a ton of money, okay.
And, and then relax the rest of my life.
Okay.
So no, I did not picture this.
And when you started, there was this kind of, what was life like for the average auditor? Or basically you were on the road Monday through Thursday, come home. And
Yeah.
has that changed post-COVID, or is that the same for people that work at EY?
No, so in audit, audit is very seasonal. And as much as we've pushed to not make it as seasonal, including doing a lot more control testing and so forth, it still is. And so when I was back in audit, let's say in the fall, you kind of worked somewhat normal hours. I'll say 50 hours a week. From January through mid-April, you worked, 80, 100 hours a week.
Wow.
And then from May to August, it was slow. It was much slower. So, now I'm going to tell you some things that I don't really say. You know, we'd go to the movies in the afternoon. We'd have some fun. We'd go out a lot.
Right.
But it was very seasonal that way.
Okay.
That changed over time, where that's not the case as much anymore.
So now people work 80 hours every week, or no? Okay.
No, it's more balanced in audit. Now, in consulting, it's a little different. In consulting, it's more steady in terms of, you know, when you have a deadline on a project, you work a lot of hours, but it's more, you know, it's more a month here and so forth, a month there. And then you're working more normal hours. And then, I would say tax is also seasonal. There's a seasonality to tax. So, I mean, that's kind of the way it is. The travel part, you know, a lot of young people today, they join and they're dying to travel, you know, as opposed to people who've been traveling are dying not to travel. And they're so excited when they go on their first business trip. And it is exciting, you know, they have a new bag and a new suit, and it's kind of fun. But there isn't as much travel as there used to be. Right. Part of it is the whole technology and video, but as I mentioned, part of it also is that, you know, we're much bigger now, and we have a lot of expertise all over the world, including all over different cities. And so before, the travel used to be because you would travel because you had a certain expertise to city XYZ or whatever. Now we utilize the whole organization better that way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was on a plane for 25 years, and people thought it was exotic, you know, go to London for breakfast, go to China for lunch. And there's this Bill Murray movie, Lost in Translation, where he's like up, depressed in the middle of the night, but he meets Scarlett Johansson. I had a lot of those moments without Scarlett Johansson, but it just, like, I just hated it after a while. And so one of the reasons I'm here, because I get to travel. All right, let's move to, I want to ask a few final questions. You've had this incredible success. I think there are fewer than 30 or 40 companies in the world that have more than 400,000 employees. Okay, so you've grown revenues, you doubled revenues. You had one setback in your leadership, which was you wanted to split the firm into tax or audit and consulting so that both could grow faster. And you had to get layers of approvals because it's a partnership. So that didn't work out. So what happened, and what are the lessons that you learned from that leadership setback amid just 39 years of great success?
Yeah, so I need 2 days to answer this question, but no, so let me take us back. So I guess now it's about 2 years ago or so, 2.5 years ago, we started looking at the company and strategically where we needed to go. And we started looking at what will it take for us to be 70 billion, 80 billion, you know, $100 billion company. And when we did the analysis, in the current structure, it would be very hard to do that because of the conflicts, and in particular for us. So we audit.
So for students, that means if you have a client where you're the auditor, you can't also do consulting, because the theory is that you'll kind of lighten up on the audit if you're getting a lot of business doing consulting.
Correct. And back when I was in audit and so forth, you were allowed to do that. You were allowed to do consulting work at your audit clients, which is the group that we started. That was how we started the group, because we had all these relationships at our audit clients, and then we were selling them consulting around risk management. But then that all ended. You can't do that anymore with Sarbanes-Oxley and everything else. So we basically thought, okay, let's explore this in terms of really separating out into audit. And when I say consulting, that included our strategy and transaction business, our consulting business, and a part of tax, a bigger part of tax. So we went down the road of exploring this. Unfortunately, even in the early days, it leaked into the press, and the Financial Times in particular loved this.
You were on the front page of the newspaper all the time.
Yeah, yes, that's true. But it was they loved it, and they loved it because they liked the idea and they thought it was the right thing. So in the early times, even with the Financial Times, they thought this was fantastic. So we got some nice puff pieces and all this in the press. But we were moving along. We had a very large group internally. We hired, our global board allowed me to hire investment bankers and lawyers and so forth to really explore this with a lot of seriousness. This all moved along. And then it came down to, really splitting the people, which we had done a lot of splitting of the people. But there were a couple things that then became hangups. One was tax, okay? So tax, it was important to our audit practice, but it was also important to our consulting practice. And our tax people themselves wanted to be more part of consulting than part of audit. So in the US, we kind of had this somewhat solved because, people were going where they wanted to go. But in Europe, they all wanted to go to consulting. And because in Europe, there's strict rules in terms of, in the US, you can do some tax work on your audit clients.
Does the average consulting partner make more than the average audit partner, or about the same?
No. So that depends on which geography you're in.
Okay.
In Europe, the average consulting partner makes more than the average audit partners. In the US, actually, the average audit partner, depending on the year, makes more money. And so what changed the US audit market was Sarbanes-Oxley. It made it incredibly more profitable. So, and that doesn't exist elsewhere. So the tax thing became an issue. And then we also had a group of audit partners in the US that didn't want this to happen. Now, even with all that, the strategic reason to do it was there. But the way our governance works is you had to have, obviously, approval at the global board, which we had. But every country board would have to approve. And we had every country board approving it except for the US. So the US country board voted, and that vote, there were 15 people on the US country board, and we needed a 2/3 vote to move forward, which we needed 10 people, and 9 people voted for it. And so that ended the process. So what have we learned from it? What we've learned is that, number one, we have to figure out tax and where tax goes. The issue in terms of the conflict and the strategy going forward is still there. And it's there for EY, and it's there for the other firms as well. And whether the regulators, so Deloitte is bigger than us. Deloitte's audit practice, I think, is around maybe 12 billion, and there's 60 billion in total. So whether the regulators will allow for the audit piece to be smaller and smaller and not matter to Deloitte going forward is a fair question. That's a fair question with all of them, but Deloitte's further ahead. So my own personal belief is this will come back around. When the conflicts become greater and when growth slows because of them and so forth. And so I think you will see more of this as you go forward.
You couldn't give that one person like a little raise to?
Well, it was a couple people.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And we didn't, these were secret votes. We don't even know who they were. But now in the US, we've changed our governance starting July 1, where a few people can't hold back the majority.
Got it. Okay.
So we've changed all that. So we've learned, when people say these are learning experiences, they really are. We've learned a lot in terms of our business and how to move things forward.
All right, final 2 questions. You're on the Colgate board. You love Colgate. 2 kids went there. Our basketball team's here. Until Dwayne's, I don't know if Dwayne is here, but until Dwayne Simpkins became the coach of American University, Colgate's coach, Matt Langle, has been by far the best. So what's the best strategy to beat Colgate?
Matt Langle has to leave.
Okay.
But, no, I don't. Well, you guys beat us. You beat us this year.
Oh, at Colgate, right?
At Colgate, that's what these guys
We had a
said,
lot of
so.
injuries later in the year, but otherwise we would have beat them twice. But
You sound like the Sixers now.
exactly.
No, it's,
Knicks played pretty well last night. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an exciting game. It was, no, but I think the Colgate part's been fun, but it's I was joking around with you. Matt Langle has made a difference. Having a coach like that has made a difference, and we're worried about the transfer portal and everything else, and people are using that differently. But, as I said to you, we're afraid that we made it into the tournament a lot now, but we haven't won in the tournament. And we are afraid that if we ever win in the NCAA tournament, that Matt will get some kind of huge offer and then we'll lose him. So every time we get into this tournament game, it's like, do we want to win? I don't know. We're not going to go much further.
We have a number of board members here, so our goal is to win in the tournament and then to have the board give our coach a retention package. So, all right, last question is, we have 400 or so American University grads at EY. If we want to grow that to 800 or like double, what's the best strategy that we should use, and what's your advice to all the students in the room on getting a job with EY?
Okay, so my advice to you is to utilize the 400 people at EY, to be involved with the university, come here, help recruit. That's been the best answer. I mean, I've done that with Colgate. Colgate's a smaller school and so forth, but we really put a lot of effort in terms of the alumni put a lot of effort. So I think if we gather up the 400 people, and especially a few of them are partners and so forth, that's going to be the best way to get us to recruit more people. And from a student perspective, I think you said it, Dave. I think learning AI, sustainability, those are the things that are going to differentiate you versus everyone else. And then also your personality. We are a very friendly organization. It's part of our culture. We want to recruit people that are like that, that are people that can talk to people that are friendly with people that like that kind of culture.
Got it. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes. We'll open it up to questions, particularly from students. Yes, go ahead. Maybe introduce yourself, what year, and what's your question?
Thank you so much. I want to thank you for coming today. It's a great opportunity for all of us, and I'll start with introduction. My name's Jack Talauskas. I'm a senior at Kogod studying business administration, and today we talked about audit, transparency, and even one of the sustainability lines of businesses at UI being how to report climate initiatives and environmental impacts. And so my question is, I feel like going into 2024, there have been more regulations on how companies go about sustainability and how to report their impacts. And with this said, I'm curious how EY is going about this and other companies. Are companies having difficulty trying to find balance in value-driven sustainability operations and regulation-driven operations? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. And we at EY believe that everything has to be value-driven. Because if it's not to use the word in a different way, if it's not going to be sustainable. So we talked about it in the earlier group about a balance. And so this cannot be around just reporting and looking good in your reporting. This has to be around you really changing your business for it to be sustainable. And so that's what we've been telling our clients. That's what we've been advising our clients. And so I think that's been our approach. It's got to be value driven. It's got to make sense for your business. And the pressures are for that to happen. As I mentioned, what's really kind of flipped the switch on sustainability is when investors, when the asset managers, asset owners have said, you know what, we want to invest in sustainable businesses. That all of a sudden has put a lot of pressure on companies to be sustainable. So that's put the pressure on. But I also think this needs to be a balance. In some places this has gone too much towards it happening right away and so forth, and that's not really doable. Right now there's a big difference between Europe and the U.S. I'll say actually Europe and the U.S. and Asia, because Europe is so far ahead on this, and it has been ahead. And obviously, even their reporting regulations are all out there. The EU regulations are out there. ISSB are out there. The U.S. has been a laggard from that perspective, and the U.S. needs to catch up. But I do think we need to get the world a little bit more balanced around this as well.
Question. Yes, over here, Charlie.
Good morning, or midday, as we say. I'm Charlie. I'm a freshman studying business administration. I just have to say, this room is so special, looking at all the board members, the students. So this is where my question comes from. In DC, we have all these opportunities coming at us, like being able to intern with Congress. So my question has two parts. First is, how would you approach this? But secondly, I'm really interested into your time management. As someone as successful as yourself, how do you get all of it done in a day? Like, how do you sleep? Almost. But yeah, well, thank you.
Well, thank you. It's time management is important. It's important in everything you do, and it's important to you as an individual. And you know, we could all sustain you know, things being out of kilter from a time management perspective for a period of time. It's unsustainable over the long term. So, you know, when I mentioned before, when you're working 100 hours a week, I think as long as people know there's an end to that and so forth, they can deal with it. If they think there's no end, then that's a problem. But in terms of me, look, I've always been, you know, I start early, and I start probably in the office around 6:30. I try to use the first hour and a half of the day to organize the day and organize what I'm going to do and so forth. Then usually the day gets kind of crazy and, you know, and so forth. And then, you know, I usually have some kind of night event that I go to. But I try to leave the weekends really as free as possible, because I think it's important to spend time with your family, your friends, and so forth. So, and that's something that I've done my entire career. Very rarely have we talk about travel, have I traveled over a weekend. Even, you know, one of the stories, I was, when we started this group, we had a project with a bank that was based in Switzerland, in Stockholm, and I was the lead partner on this project, and it was a big project for us. And my first son was just born, so I would literally go to Stockholm Monday morning, or Sunday night late. I would get there Monday morning, I'd work the week, and I would come back on Fridays, and I would do the same thing. And that I did that for 6 months because I wanted to see my baby. And so, you know, you have to be committed to your family and your friends just as much as work.
It's very, I'll just tell the students a story. So, I mean, I had these moments because I was on the road all the time, and I was in Singapore, and it was my son's birthday. I think he was 10. And I sent him a note how much I loved him, how much I'm sorry I missed his birthday, you know, how special he was. It was really kind of, I probably didn't sleep very much. It was this emotional note. And he sent back a text saying, "Thanks, Dad. Do you know where the clicker is?" And I thought, okay, I got to get off the road. So, okay, next
Was
question.
that Cats in the Cradle? Was that song playing there?
Next question. Y2K, you had a question.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have one. In EIAI, I'm so happy you're using co-pilots accelerating and spreading out the whole organization. But how do you have evaluation metrics for accuracy or hallucination?
So right now, while we're using AI, we're checking everything using humans.
Okay.
And so we're not doing anything in terms of client deliverables that are purely done by AI. We're using humans to check everything. So until we have confidence, we will not do that.
Oh, and then Kogart is using prompt engineering, and then one other thing is small ones like you have Asians or something, small micro success, so you can collect some harvest as soon as you can. So we are Kogart AI thinking about spread it out, changing syllabus, all of them into future right now. So David did a great job spreading out all of these kind of things by starting end of 2024. So I was thinking about your success using Microsoft Copilot is a brilliant idea. So I'm going to recommend that we're using Copilots and make it.
We have it
fast.
for, I think every AU student
Yeah,
has a
so-
Copilot license.
Yeah, which one?
Question is, I'm not sure, Casey, I don't know if you, but we have to, like, first we have to train all our faculty to use it, which we're doing, and then the faculty need to train our students. So this is a revolutionary change in education, and one of our big challenges is education typically moves very slowly.
Yeah.
And we moved fast.
That's correct. Our focus is a student and faculty, those two things we are focusing
Yeah.
on right now.
Yeah.
Great. Maybe one last question, if there is one, in the back.
I can't see. Hi, I'm Inken. I just recently graduated from our sustainability management program, and I have a question about your, I guess, diversity initiatives, because I'm also just noticing there's 3 questions. It was only men asking the questions, and I feel like that happens a lot. And you talked a little bit about that like 50% of the people you hire at the hiring stage are female, and then later, as you kind of go up the ranks, that goes down a little bit. So I am curious if you have any initiatives or any like things in place to empower women or to encourage them to speak up. Yeah.
Great question.
Yes, we have a program. We have many programs. We have a program called Women Fast Forward, which is a global program which is really focused on women, enhancing women's career through EY, and this is something that we do with clients as well. So we have programs like that. We have women mentoring women. We have men mentoring women, but the issue with the 34%, the 50% to the 34%, is obviously off-ramping, and we do have programs in terms of off-ramping and on-ramping, re-entering the workforce. But to be honest, it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, if you're going to have a child and you leave for whatever 4, 5, 6 months, that's workable. But when you leave for 5 years, it's difficult then to come back into a similar role with the same career trajectory. And that's where we're trying to improve things as best we can. But I would say that's where the only way we're going to get the 50 to 50 would be to improve on that.
Let me thank everybody for coming. This is a fantastic audience. Carmine, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Congratulations on your amazing career. And I'm glad that your parents were able to see your incredible success.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to get a picture with the basketball team and text it to the coach of Colgate. So,
All right.
Okay.